Hi viewers, so in this section we'll be talking about C Sharp collections. You'll be learning about what are collections and why you need collections and practical code examples. So there are two ways to group objects. So it's arrays or collections. So arrays are suitable for fixed number of strongly type objects, meaning when you declare array, it's a fixed number. Like if it's say if you declare array of 10 elements, it's fixed for 10 elements, so it can't dynamically grow into 15 elements or so. But a collection can dynamically grow or shrink, meaning you might start a collection with say you might add 10 elements and then you can add more, so it can become automatically 15. You can add more to become 20, and if you remove the elements then it can shrink. It will auto shrink into a smaller, if up to 2 or 3. Even from 15 you can keep on removing elements and it can come down, so it's dynamically growing and shrinking. So that's why we use collections. So some common collection classes are found in system collection generic namespace or the other two namespaces listed here. And in this session we'll be covering about system.collections.generic and classes found in that namespace, mainly dictionary, list, queue, sorted list, and stack. So we'll be selecting two of them, like list and dictionary. So then once we do two, it's easy for you to uh, deal with the rest as well. Okay guys, so let's move forward, and the reference will be the Microsoft Docs references, right? Okay. So now let me go and do some practicals with this. So let me start Visual Studio interface, and then let me create a new project. So before I go into that, let me also open some of the documents. So if you want to have a look at the collections, what you have to do is you can say C Sharp collections in a Google search, and then you will get the Microsoft documents, and you will see the section about collections which talks and the various stuff. And so what are arrays before now? As if you need to know about arrays, you can read about arrays in the Microsoft Docs. You will see, it's like fixed size. It's like when once you create array, it's fixed sized. If you look at collections, it can grow and shrink. And so this is a simple example in the Microsoft Docs for collections. So let us say if you want to store a list of items, right? So basically what you do is you will create object of list. So because list is one type of one important type in the system.collection generic classes. So what is a list? Basically, as it says, it can hold a list of values, right? So when in this code sample, you can see it creates a list and stores a list of strings. So it can be a list of strings, or it can be a list of integers, or it can be a list of objects, use like say employee objects. So in this example, it stores it and puts it into a var. So what is var? For that you can have a look at the once again the docs, and so basically it is used to at method scope you can have implicit types, like so it's the type will determine um, the, the the type will be determined based on the data it has stored, right? So you can read about var if you need. So anyhow, I just showed about var because in this example it goes. So let me just take a copy of this, and then let us put it into our project. So I'm going to make a project, C Sharp. I'm going to create a project, and I'm going to make it a console application. So because it's good to discuss this in a console application without making like a complex GUI. So I'm going to select a console application, .NET Framework type, C Sharp. So this is Visual Studio 2019, the community edition I'm using. Okay, so I'm going forward by clicking next, and let me say example for collections. Example for collections, and let me say it's like a list because I'm talking about the list, right? Okay, so let me you can specify where you want to save it, right? So uh, Okay, so let me create it. So the project got created and I got my main method. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this code and going to put it here. So this is a list of strings. So for example, if I want to store a list of strings, when I say books, right? So or subjects, say I want to store the list of subjects. So what if so then I'll have to say so how do you add something to a list is you will say dot add, right? So add is a method you found in the list where you can add items. So I'm going to add, let us say, a book. So what are the subjects? Let me say Java as a subject, and let us say C sharp as a subject. Let's say subject of a student, right? And let us say Oracle, and let's say database as a subject, right? So a list of subjects. So once you store in a list, then you can traverse the list, meaning you can go through the list and let us say output the item. So once again from the Microsoft Docs, I will get this. So you can basically you call it as iterating through a list. So you can go through a list, iterate through a list, and you can print the data, right? So let me just copy it. So it's reference based, so you will be taking and interpreting stuff. So then for each is the construct you will be using here. Then your list, so your list is, let us say, subjects, right? So I put s, so I'll have to put it as subjects. Then you will say var, basically for each var, then you put your variable here, right? Subjects. So from the subjects list you will be taking subject by subject, right? So you'll say var, say subject, or you can call it as x if you want, right? So any name, just some, but make sure you give a meaningful name. But just to show the difference, I will say x. So then from subjects you'll be taking one by one, let us say s, right? Subjects one by one. So then you can output it, right? So one by one. So rather than telling it as s, let me call it as subject. So that it, from the subjects you'll be taking one by one subject, and then you will output the subject, right? And you, if I let me run this and see whether it outputs the data. So I just click the run button. So output does not stay. So for the output to stay, you will have to make sure you have to say console dot read line, so that you know it waits until you enter something from the keyboard. So if I run this now, so the output comes. So if I make it a little larger for you, you'll be able to see it. So the output comes in the same line. So Java, C sharp. So why is it coming in the same line? Because I have said write. So if I say write line, so instead of write, if I say dot write line, so it should print line by line. So if I run now, so the data comes down. So so using a list is simple, and in the list you will have so you can basically add items into a list, and then you can basically deal with a list to store the data, and you can access a list in many different ways. You can just access it as if you know using the syntax similar to arrays. So you can have a look at the this Microsoft Docs reference, right? And you can remove anything from a list by specifying the item, right? So you can say remove and just remove. Let us say if I want to remove item from the list, so after I print, say I want to remove items, say from subjects list, if I say remove, right? So then I can say I want to remove, say, Oracle, right? So you can remove it from the list. So now if I print, so you can take the same for each loop and just print it once again. So it's known as iterating. So when you go through using a for each loop and go through a list, you call it as iterating the list. So basically now if I run so if for me to show you the difference, let me print a line here. So let me say console.write line, and just here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just printing like some empty lines, empty line, and then say like this, you know, so just to keep a space. So if I run this now, See, it prints that line, and now in the list printed there's no Oracle because I removed Oracle, right? So that's simple. So it's a simple list. So simply stores the items in this manner, right? And then you have something called dictionary. That is if you want to store like a key value pair. So instead of just a list of values, say if you want to store key value pair. So then once again, as we said in this course, we are going to produce developers basically so that you should the style is you should be able to reference. So now let us say if you want to deal with dictionary, you should be able to use these Microsoft Docs and then check about collections, about say some other types of collections, and from the Microsoft Docs you should be able to access. So if I go into dictionary, that's where you get in a Microsoft Docs, you get various examples and stuff like that. So as said, dictionary is like key value pair based, right? So if you look here, it's a key and a value, right? So this is an example for that. So let me make a new project. So let's make a new project, file, new project. Once again, it's going to be a console application, right? So because it's simple when you discuss certain things, console application, .NET framework. So this time I'll say example once again for collections, but this time let us say for dictionary, right? Example for dictionary. Okay, so then the style is if you want to become a developer, basically you have to get used to referencing and using the APIs and technical docs. So I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to create a dictionary with the help of the Microsoft Docs, right? Okay, so we created a dictionary. Its key type is string. So you will understand. So it's object. Dictionary is a class. So you are creating object, and here you are telling the key is a string and the value is also a string, right? But if you want, you can change it. Let us say if you want, you can say the key is, let us say, integer, right? Up to you, right? And the value is a string, right? So I'm just giving example, right? So in that case, now I just change the key to be an integer. So then let us say let's say I have a list of students. So let me say students, right? So my dictionary is known as I gave the name as students. And then into the dictionary, if you want to add items, so you'll call the add method, right? And then you put the key and the value. So basically you'll take the dictionary and you will say add, right? And then what you are adding is key and value. Let us say I got my first student. Say my first student number is, say, student number 1, for example. And so its key is an integer, so just an integer 1. And then string with my student detail. Let us say my student is John. Student number 1 is John, and a string I'm just going to put some commas, and let us say John, and let us say he's from Sydney, and let us say his phone number is something, some phone number, right? So this way I can keep on adding. So I can say students, that is my dictionary, once again add. Then I can put my second key, say the second student number. It need not to be in order. Say for example, if my second student is, let me give some student numbers, say student number 1, and say I want my student number 4 in the class, right? The fourth student, for example. I'm just giving example, right? And it need not to be 1 4. You can, if you got numbers like, okay, student number, say 4 5, uh, something like that, some student number, like some number. So and assume this my second student is number is 7865, right? And then I'm going to put, let us say, the student name, say Anne. Say Anne is from Melbourne, for example. And let us say the phone number, right? Something like this. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this, so that, so just to show that it's a list. So what are these numbers? It's just an integer, right? So in this case, just I'm assuming these are my student numbers, right? In the campus. So let us say so in my campus, say I got student number 3445. Say that is Frank. Let us say Frank is from Melbourne, and say his phone number is something like this, right? And say another student, it's just a number, right? So 9987. Say Jack, right? Something like that. Say Jack is from Sydney, and let's say this is Jack's phone number, right? Something like this. So I added to the dictionary, I added four of my students. So once you add, then you can traverse a dictionary, like say in your program, you later on you want to output the stuff. So now, if you want to become a developer, basically what you have to do is you should be able to reference, from the APIs, as I said earlier. So in this API, now you should be able to find how you will be able to output. So when you look at the API, you will see you can say you can refer to the dictionary, and you can refer to the key. So because in this example, these are the keys, right? So it's referring. So same, you can refer it with the key, right? So let us say if I want to output one of my students, so then I can say, okay, console dot write line, console dot write line, and let's say I want to output, right? So then from the list, right? So what is the list? So list name, so not the list, I'm sorry, the dictionary. So it's students, right? So from students dictionary, so I can say I need to output a student. So then the syntax you have to get from the docs. So it's square brackets, then you give the key, right? So basically you put square brackets and then you give the key. Let us say I want to output Frank. So Frank's details. So Frank, I should know the Frank student number. So I know it as 3445. So you just put it here, right? Why it's given as a string here? Because in this example, the key is a string. But in my case, the key is an integer. So that's why I don't give it as a string, right? So this should work. So if I run this, as you know, I have to put console dot in order to keep the cursor, I have to say console dot read line. Otherwise, the cursor, uh, the output will just come and go. So let me just increase. Right now, see, it works. So it outputs Frank. Why? Because I'm accessing from the dictionary student 3445. So student 3445 is Frank. So it works, right? That's the beauty of it, right? So I can access my dictionary items. I can traverse a dictionary, like, so I can do many things. I can get the key value pairs, for example. uh, let's look into some other stuff. Basically, you can add, you can write, you can basically read. So you can get, let us say, for each enumeration dictionary elements, the elements are retrieved as key value pair. So for each, it says when you use for each to enumerate dictionary elements, the elements are retrieved as key value pairs, right? So if you look at the previous example, when it was a list, right? Let me show it to you. So when you put the for each in the list, when you put the for each to traverse the list, basically you got item by item, because it's a list of items, right? But the document Microsoft Docs says when you use for each and traverse, enumerate, meaning traverse a dictionary, elements are retrieved as key value pairs. So it's not just a set of values like in the list. It's key value pairs, right? So because it's a dictionary is key value. So you say key value pair, and then you can access the key or the value, right? So let's get this. Yeah. So let's take this and let's modify it to suit our requirements, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print something here. So I just want to say that, like we finish printing that individual item just for testing purpose, right? So it's write line. So let me put this down because that's something you should do down. So basically I'm writing the data. So write line, right? So just making like empty space, right over here, and then the for each loop. Okay, so I don't need this because I got this one down. So then, as it says, it's key value pair. So in my case, my key is integer, right? And some name, right? So it can be X or some, but this is important. This should be the name of the dictionary. So my name of the dictionary is students, right? The name of the dictionary is students. So I'm going to put this as students. and then the key value pairs. So then basically I can if I want to display only the keys, just assume. Now what this syntax is, just don't get yourself confused. So this is like outputting key. So if I say x, it output as x, so key. Then this means like parameterize output. So when you say curly bracket 0 and curly bracket 1, which means the 0, curly bracket 0 means whatever in the console or write line, whatever you give here as the first value will come here, and the comma, and whatever the second value is C. So it's because in C sharp indexes are 0 based, right? So that's why when you put 0, basically, so this is the first item you are printing in the right line, but the first item is referred as 0 and the second one. So basically it's printing the keys and the values. So if simple as that. So if I run this, it should print the list of keys and values, right? See the key 43, because as you can see when I added over here my 4534 John Sydney, so it works. Then my next key is 7856, and so see it prints 7856. Likewise the four values are printed. So why does it say key and why does it say value here? Because in the output we said key, but if you say x and if you say y, for example, right, and if you run this, it prints as x and y. So it's just a name, x and y. So hope that's clear to you. But so this shows that you can access. So why is this important? Especially when you do C sharp database programming, let us say C sharp ADO.NET database programming. For example, if you connect to a database and if you retrieve the data, so from the database, then when you get your data, probably you will have to put them into a list, right? If you need to know about those, have a look at the other videos in this C sharp A to Z video series, which we have given database programming examples, tutorials, and then you can see that in the when you connect to a database, that we will be retrieving the data and we will be uh, uh, putting the data into a list, right, or a dictionary depending on situation, and then we'll be using it in the front end. So there are some tutorials in this video series about connecting to database, and not only that, like multi-tiered architecture. So have a look at these videos, and let's see whether we have covered the stuff. So let's go to this. So we looked at it and references was this. So the conclusion is we learn about the usage of collections and why is it important, and we did some practicals. So that's the end of the session, and hope you all enjoyed this session. And the idea is to make you comfortable with referencing, because that's the style you need to know when you if you want to go and work in the industry. So thanks for enjoying the video, and let's meet with another video.